So started last time we started the Brachot of Etz. Etz, we actually gave a long introduction to Brachot, and that we saw the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. He had different kinds of Brachot, Deshain, and different kinds, and now we're going to learn halachot. They always say that the halachot of Brachot, we meet them all the time, but they are hard because they have many, many details in them. On that you say etz, on that shakol, and on that if it changes, we say adama. So I'll give just one halacha later as an example, as you can see those small details. But what we'll try to do today is more of the, let's get a general idea. Okay, then so we don't get lost with all of the details. And the main question we have today is about fruit that was changed from what they were at the beginning. That's our topic. They were cooked. They were squeezed, and we have juice, orange juice, apple juice, chocolate, okay, potato puree, apple sauce, apple puree. So fruit that were changed from the original state, that's the topic for today. Sugar, the same for sugar, it was changed. That's the topic for today. And as maybe the two rules before we go into the details is you're just joining us as we are going over the rules that we're going to be discussing today. And we're going to talk about last week we didn't have learning. We'll be fine. So last year was introduction, and an introduction of why we have different kinds of brachot, and today we're going to talk about specifically borei pri ha'etz, although the rules, the general ideas, apply to most of the foods, also to borei pri adama. So they mentioned that the question is a fruit that changed. Okay, olive oil, for example, wine, grape juice. Okay, all these the fruit they are fruit that changed. So the rules. Okay, let's give the rule. The rule is that the first and general rule that when we say borei pri ha'etz, we say borei pri ha'etz on the fruit as is, okay, as is, if the fruit as is good for eating and people planted to eat it the way it is. Okay, that's the first rule. People planted to eat it the way it is. Let's give an example. I'll give you an example. Chavush, exactly. Chavush, yeah. I have 100 of them. Chavush. So you have chavushim. I'm not sure how you call them in English. It's a very hard fruit. Quince. Okay, quince. You can eat it only on coincidence. That's why it's called quince. Yeah. But you have to eat. You have to cook it. Okay. Yeah. So let's say you have a chavush. Okay. Can you eat it at all if it's raw? No. Okay, so you won't say a bracha at all. If you eat it raw, you don't say a bracha. It's not food, right? It's not food. But then if you cook it and you eat it cooked, what will be the bracha?
There's two possibilities. One, because if you cut the chabush and you put it in a dish and it retains its shape and form, that's one. But what if you made chabush preserves? That's the other thing that people do.
So let's first discuss just when it keeps its shape. Afterwards, we'll just talk about when it changes its shape.
It's, right?
It comes off a tree.
I mean, there are other foods that come off a tree that don't say it.
Yeah, but it comes from a tree. Pineapple, yeah, okay. Pineapple is a tree.
The nature of the
no, is it a tree?
It's the nature. It's a
yeah.
You train that they have to take these machines and get them up.
Okay.
No, the nature of the
watermelon.
No, pineapple is pineapple.
There's a way to check. Okay. Okay, there's a way to check that. Okay.
Banana.
But banana we say adama. That's a question why we say we'll discuss it while we say adama banana.
Yeah.
From what it looks in the pictures, it's more like a bush. Pineapples. It's a plant. And I'm not sure how many years it lives. That also might change the reason of the bracha.
After you take the fruit, you know
what happens to the tree itself.
It goes away, and then these sprouts the following year.
Right.
We have a lot of variables.
We asked it last week. Last time we learned about what is considered a tree, and I think we said that we'll learn it probably not today, but the next week we'll discuss what is considered a tree. For example, you like hiking, right? One of the fruits you have now is petal, raspberry. Oh, it's what raspberry? Is it a tree or is it
Did
a
you confirm the bluebery question?
No, I didn't check it. But
Okay,
we'll touch them next
I
week.
believe that blueberry is the eighth,
Okay.
and strawberry is the Adama.
What about screwed apple?
So let's discuss. So let's go from the rules. Okay.
Okay, looks like it.
So looks like an apple. It is an apple. Okay.
Tastes like it.
It's like an apple. On blueberries, it's say price. That's what it seems like. But that we'll discuss with Hashem next week. What is considered a tree? That's what we'll keep all those questions for next week. This week is when something changes. So the first rule and the basic rule and is if we eat it as it is and it's planted to be eaten as it is, we say ha'etz. If it changes, we might say adama. I'm trying to think of an example. Watermelon. What fruit doesn't taste so well when it's cooked?
What are you talking about when you say changes?
Cook. Let's say start from cooking. Okay, cooking. Okay, because it's not the main way of eating it. Banana, if you cook banana, okay, that's so adama. But
Apple is one. Poached apples. Poaching is boiling water over it. What about a tomato?
You eat baked apples. You do eat baked apples. So
Yeah.
So it's also considered part of the fruit and the way of eating it. Grapes, it's changed, yeah, but right. Okay, but that's the first rule. Okay, now here we come to chavush, quinces, as we said. We cook them, and because we eat them and they're planted to be eaten only when they are cooked, even if when they are cooked, the bracha will be because that's the way you plant it. That's okay. Now I'll read the Shulchan Aruch. I'll just translate it. All the fruit which are good, also cooked and also raw, like apples and good evening, like apples and pears. Okay, you see how ate on them, whether they're cooked or whether they are raw. Okay, because that's the way you grow them. You grow them to be eaten, cooked, and raw. That's the normal way of eating them. But if the normal way of eating them is when they are only cooked, okay, only cooked, like quince, when you eat it when it's raw, you say on it shehakol, okay. Like on maybe quince, I'm not sure. I never tasted it when it's raw. Maybe you can't even eat it, so you won't say a bracha at all. If you can eat it a bit, you'll say shehakol. When you cook it, the bracha will be borei pri ha'etz. Okay? So that's one rule.
Yeah. Regarding the apple, so you have the baked apple where it retains its form, but you also have applesauce or a second.
So applesauce, we're going to get to it in just a moment. Okay. And here comes the second rule. Generally speaking, you say the bracha of ha'etz when you can see the form of the fruit. As soon as the form has changed, we have a question. How much is this change considered the fruit? Or how much is the change, we say it changes the fruit and it's not the fruit anymore, it's something new. If the change, okay, we maintains the form of the fruit, maintains the name of the fruit. We'll give examples in just a moment. Okay, if it maintains the name of the fruit, we say ha'etz, and if it's vegetables, strawberry or something, we'll say adama. If we call it that the form is changed, okay, the form is changed, so we'll say shehakol or something else. Okay, we'll give examples in just a moment. Now, just let's think, how could we change a form of fruit? Mash it, okay, we make puree. We can squeeze it, okay, and make juice. Maybe grind it and make flour, but that's the two main topics we have.
For example, grinding to make flour, for example, carob. There is a ground carob.
Ground carob, right? Okay, ground carob. So what the bracha will be on carob flour? I met a few weeks someone who he works in a nursery of avocados. And he told me that in the last few years they've been planting many carob trees. I asked, why carob tree? Who eats carob? I mean, how much carob can you eat? They use it sometimes as if a fake chocolate and other. He told me they found a way to make like gelatin from the seeds of the carobs, and it's a big market for all. So now not just kosher for vegan people. So it's a big market in the vegan world. Okay, so let's start from fruit. Let's start from squeezing fruit or making juice. And here we have an interesting halacha. A bit of something which might sound for us a bit strange. When we take a fruit, almost every fruit besides two kinds of fruit, and we squeeze them, the juice, the liquid that comes out is considered something else, something new. And the bracha will be shakol. So if we make orange juice, apple juice, the bracha will be shakol.
What if it's orange juice?
That also looks like a juice. The common thing is to say shakol on it. Although you might say there's pulp in it, it's considered, the halacha considers it as ze'ah be'alma. It's just sweat that comes out of the fruit. The same for silan. You can go and buy silan, it's not so cheap. That's considered just the sweat of the fruit. It's not the main part of the fruit, not the main way of drinking it. And the halacha says there's just two exceptions for that. Grapes, the bracha on squeezed grapes will be hagafen if it's wine, not vinegar. Okay. And here comes the second one. Try and guess what will be the second exemption. Zeitim, exactly. Oil. And that brings us a question. Why is oil different than juice? Yeah, and I think we'll give two explanations. One more of a halachic explanation and one more of a hashkafic explanation. In the Mishkan, right. So that comes with maybe the hashkafic explanation.
Grape juice.
Grape juice is hagafen. Hagafen, yeah. Grape juice, you can do kiddush on grape juice. Yeah, it's hagafen. So grape juice and olive oil will have a different bracha. Grape juice should be ha'etz, but because it's grape juice and it's considered wine, it's elevated to be hagafen. And olive oil, since it's important, and maybe most of the olives are planted for olive oil, and it's also special. We use it in the Mishkan. We use it a lot. Olive oil. Some people like anointing, right? As anointing, right? We use it. It's an important oil. So we see on it borei pri ha'etz. Here comes something into detail, since most of us don't drink olive oil so much, that if you eat it together with bread, the bracha will be hamotzi, on the bread, okay? If you drink it by itself, according to the halacha, it's not so healthy. You shouldn't drink just oil by itself. Okay, so I know some people question it, okay? So you don't say bracha at all, but he says, yeah, if you have a kind of mixture, which is called on that time anigron, if it used to be done with beets or beetroot water or something like that. And it used to use it as something healthy for the throat. Yeah. Right. So therefore.
We had some movers in these houses taking refrigerators on their backs. Twice my age, and you're carrying a refrigerator up 3 flights of stairs. 4 teaspoons of Shemen Zayed Korean.
Right. Yeah.
Those are medicinal.
Right.
Wheat germ oil, flaxseed oil. These are not tasty things.
Yeah.
It's for medicinal.
Medicinal. So if you have this mixture, so you say ha'etz on it. Okay, but since it's not so common, we don't usually make that mixture. So it's just interesting to know the halacha. Now, why is this halacha a bit tricky? And we'll get to it. We'll explain it about the juice. I make orange juice. It has real oranges inside that you can sometimes see the pulp. The bracha will be shakol yam dvaro. Now, for vegetables, typically not for food, but for vegetables, let's say I make borscht. I make borscht, right? All of us came from Russia, right? Not sure, I didn't come from Russia. Maybe I did. but it's cabbages with beets, and you drink the water and eat it, and that's your food. Okay? You say, since the water, it's not water anymore, it's broth that got absorbed the flavor and color and everything from the vegetables, the bracha on it will be adama. Very interesting. You'll have soup, and the water absorb all of the flavor. The bracha will be adama. If I make a soup, just a vegetable soup, we usually don't realize this halacha. I make a vegetable soup without chicken inside it. Okay, without just a vegetable soup without I don't know, croutons, or not. Sometimes people who put solid. It's like a kind of flour inside. It's just a vegetable soup. The bracha should be adama, even on the water. So it's a bit mind-breaking. How could it be? I have here real oranges squeezed inside there now. Juice. I say on it she'akol. I have this borscht. What should be the bracha? Adama. Adama. Here it becomes another halacha. You learned it once a bit when it's we learned about beer, and that's, I think, the reason of it is food has more importance than drink. And that's why, for example, on beer, we say she'akol, although it's made out of grains, right? But it has more importance than drink. So the borscht isn't considered drink. You don't drink it, you eat it. It's part of your meal. I mean, that's what, at least in the times of Chazal. And also when you have soup, that's your meal. You have soup not as a drink, you have it as a meal.
So like carrot juice.
But so carrot juice will be adama. It's a drink. It's a drink. It's a drink. It's adama.
So it should be,
yeah. So if you sorry, carrot juice will be adama. Carrot juice will be she'akol. Yeah, carrot juice will be she'akol. Exactly. Carrot juice will, when you squeeze the juice out, when you squeeze the juice out, so it's just like considered the sweat that comes out of the vegetable, or the sweat that comes out of the fruit. Okay, I'll read it for you inside. This is carrot soup will be adama. Carrot juice will be she'akol.
Health-wise, when you make carrot juice, it's very, very healthy. The juice,
Right.
But it's not that way with an orange. It's much healthier to eat an
Orange
orange than
itself?
orange juice.
Okay.
Orange juice has just
well,
got
you eat
a
the
lot of
entire
sugar.
carrot. When you make carrot juice, you're consuming the entire carrot.
You are, but
And
it's
Yeah.
orange, you're not. You're just taking the juice part of it.
right. But it may be more from a quality or a health perspective, because carrot juice is from the carrot. It's healthy. It's like an offshoot of the carrot. When you're separating the juice from the orange, the juice is just it's got the orange in it, but it's mostly it's sugar. It's much healthier. You get a lot less sugar if you eat the whole orange by itself, as opposed to just squeezing the orange.
So you think the
sugar?
broth is based on health issues?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking what's
So
the
I'll-
But
difference?
also the form changes. So is that another
The form
consideration?
changes what? So we changed the form. We made it into liquid. Okay, we squeezed it. That's she'akol. There's no question about it. I didn't see any machloket about it. It's she'akol.
You make
Okay.
beets. Make beets, like a whole plate of beets. You're gonna have beet juice at the end of it. But you didn't squeeze the beets to make beet juice. It's an offshoot of the cooking process.
Right. And it's part of the food. It's part of the food, so that's why it's yeah. Now, I will bring here, I mentioned here machloket, although the custom isn't like that. But just so you know, there is a machloket. There is an opinion like that, that if the most of the way we eat the fruit is by squeezing it, so we say ha'etz. We say just like cooking. Chavushim, how do we eat chavushim? By cooking, right? So the bracha on chavushim will be ha'etz, because that's the regular way. There are some poskim who say that if, let's say, for example, I'm not sure if oranges is like that, but I'm sure in some countries, most of the oranges you pick are just for juices.
There are just juice oranges.
Yeah, we do eat oranges. So, but let's say there is such a fruit. Maybe oranges. So according to some poskim, you'll say ha'etz on it because that's the regular way of eating an orange. It's ha'etz.
There is such a thing. I mean, there are oranges that are sold as
For picking.
juice oranges.
Yeah.
At least in the
Right.
United States.
Yeah. If also here, you can, it's a different pill. Valencia and, yeah.
Blood oranges.
Okay. So anyway, that's, there's a lot like that. So just we should know it, but you can see that the common custom is to say on it shekel. Okay, and all of the juices, shekel. Now, the question about changing the form of a fruit by cooking it, mushing it. Let's give 3 examples. One, you can buy in the shops those chunks of dates. I think they're square chunks of dates, right? What bracha do you say on that? That's ha'etz. Okay. Puree, applesauce. What bracha do you say on applesauce? Okay. Question. Okay. And what bracha? Oh, apple puree. What bracha do you say? Let's give 4 examples. What bracha do you say on apple puree, potato puree, but not mushed potatoes? I'm not sure if you can still buy that instant one. Now the child or in yeshiva used to have the instant
those
one.
are dehydrated. Those are
The flakes, and you pour boiling water on it, and it becomes. So what bracha do you say on it? What bracha do you say on it? We'll explain in a moment. All the questions. And on chocolate, what bracha do we say on chocolate? Okay, chocolate. So let's start from the chocolate. A chocolate, I'll just tell you already now. It's a fiyad derech. It's a machloket. Okay, it's a machloket on chocolate. And I have a brother who used to follow Rav Lior. Rav Lior says it's Yonat ha'etz. When I learned the halachot, it seems to me more like this Yonat she'akol. And purposely, he used to stand next to me, take a piece of chocolate, and say loudly the bracha of ha'etz. So I'll hear him saying the bracha of ha'etz and say, right, 1 second. So you say she'akol. He used to try to tease me.
Chocolate with a higher percentage of cocoa.
Yeah, let's see, take 60% or 70%.
So yeah, I think the cutoff for the health thing is 72% or 70%, 72%. But I eat 85%. So to me, I mean, I say she'akol, but to me, that even the 85% is mamash.
So you have 85%. Most of it is a cocoa bean. 85%. So what bracha do you turn?
They're not changing the taste so much.
Right. So what bracha do you? So we'll get to it in a moment. Okay, we'll get to it in just a moment. Says the Rambam, says the Shulchan Aruch. Dates that you squeeze them or smush them by hand, and you made from them like a dough, and you took out the pips, exactly like those packets we buy. Even though, says the Shulchan Aruch, the bracha doesn't change, and we still need borei pri ha'etz, and the end bracha mein shalosh. Okay, that's what the Rambam says. I understood, okay, and this was my understanding, that the Rambam purposely writes here, talks here about dates that were squeezed by hand. The Rambam was very precise, I think, right? What's the word? Precise with the words he used. And he says, he squeezed them, he smushed them by hand. When you do it by hand and not with all sorts of knives and grinding it, so you can still, it looks like a date. So that's why the Rambam says here that you say the bracha of ha'etz. Okay, that's seems like my opinion. However, seems like that quite a few poskim, like Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, seems like that also the Rama has that opinion, although he brings also something else. But there's no difference if it has the same form or no, even if it changed the form, since it was dates, you are eating dates, it's still the same form. An example for it we had on breadcrumbs. We mentioned that many weeks ago that on breadcrumbs you say, it doesn't matter if you're eating this size of a bread or this size of a bread. It's a bread. It's just cut it's a very small piece of bread. You're eating many small pieces of bread. So what does it matter if you're eating a big breadcrumbs?
Let's say you're putting breadcrumbs on your schnitzel.
That we discussed in the past. Okay,
the schnitzel.
Yeah, so I think we say she'akol on schnitzel, but we won't go into it now. So that we need to finish it.
To have a roll at your table.
Yeah, but if you don't have a roll, so I think schnitzel will be she'akol, but let's continue because we have another 3 minutes. So that's what seems like in the Shulchan Aruch. Even if the form has changed, the bracha will always be ha'etz. Okay, so on applesauce you'll be saying ha'etz. On potato puree you'll be saying adama. The form has the same form. Okay, and that's what the common halacha, at least for potato puree, is to say adama. Okay, however, the Rama writes, and I'll just bring it inside. I'll read it. V'yesh omrim levarech alehem she'akol. Okay, the Rama says some say to say shakol on it because the form has changed. The form has changed. He's talking here about something else, about something called pavidela. It is some kind of jam or jelly. pavidela. וטוב לחוש לכתחילה לא שהכל עושה זה רמה, אבל אם ברח בורא פרי העץ יצא כי כן נראה עיקר. So the Rama said that if you say the העץ it's fine, if you say בורא פרי but you should say שהכל. On sugar comes from sugar cane, okay, or from beets, okay. Then the Shulchan Aruch says you say on it שהכל, because it really changed the form. If you squeeze it, it was liquid, and then you crystallize it, the form has totally changed. Then you say שהכל. So we see here something which is in between, something which keeps its form more or less, even if it's grinded, according to many poskim, you'll say ha'etz. And that's what we see on puree, especially if the puree, you can still see some of the pieces of the potato in it. If it's really cooked and grinded, and so here comes the question. You might say, some will say shakol, some will say borei pri ha'etz. And wait, you want to ask something?
You also have a situation where the form is not changed. Where the form has not changed. But like potato chips.
Yeah.
Potato chips would say adama.
Adama, potato chips say adama.
Potato chips on Pringles don't have any potato.
Yeah, on Pringles I say shakol.
Right, so
On
the
Pringles I
form is
say.
still the same as a potato. As
Yeah, but it's still a
not-
flour.
It's
quality of
reform.
what's in there.
Yeah. So
It's the,
The form is not the
Yeah, that's
because
situation
that's a
also.
manufactured
Yeah.
form. That's
Yeah.
not
they
a,
make
a
it like
natural
Yeah.
potato
form.
chip.
So on Pringles I say shakol because it's grinded, to change it all the form has changed, and then it looks like
There's no potato in it.
right.
Look at the ingredients. There's potato, maybe the flavor or flakes or
Yeah.
something. But
So why is that any different than dehydrated potato? When you say
Okay.
you mentioned a few minutes
So
ago.
the dehydrated potatoes. Let's just the Mishnah Berurah writes that on it should say shakol on also potato puree. If it's really grinded, you can't see it all. It's from potatoes. Everything is grinded. If you still have pieces of potato in it, say adama. If it's all grinded, same for applesauce, say shakol, because shakol for sure works. It works, even if it works for sure. If you can still see the pieces, they say sometimes in puree you don't really mush everything. There's sometimes big pieces left that you say adama. On the dehydrated potatoes or Pringles, it totally changed the form of it. Okay, it changed the form. It's like more like sugar, and on that you say
the form is the same.
the form. Yeah, but it was flour, and then it doesn't look like potato. And he also on chocolate.
Chip, not the form of a potato.
No, but potato chips is sliced potatoes and fried.
Potato, it curves a little bit during the
Yeah.
cooking process, but it's still a slice, a very slice of a potato.
Right, there was
And
just a-
and chocolate, just chocolate before you need to go to Mariv. So chocolate. So some okay.
Can't leave it
They
out.
can't even just chocolate. So chocolate on one hand, the form has changed. Theoretically, I could take carobs and make chocolate from carobs, right? It will look the same. It maybe will taste a bit different, but it will look the same. So on one hand, it makes sense that you should say shehakol on chocolate, and that's the common halacha, common minhag to say shehakol. Yet some poskim say you say ha'etz. Why ha'etz? Because the normal way to eating chocolate is chocolate, right? You don't eat the cocoa. I'm not sure you can even eat the cocoa beans, right? Normal way is via chocolate, and you can see it still has a color. So you say on that ha'etz, as you can see, the common minhag is to say shakol, since it's totally changed. You can't really tell at all that it's made out of cocoa. You know it's made out of cocoa because you were told, but theoretically you can make fake chocolate. But even if you have the 85% chocolate, okay, it's still
apropos the potato chips.
so that'll be shakol.
There was just a series. There was not regular potato. There was just a series of recipes about making ki'ilu potato chips out of zucchini and other vegetables, and there was a recipe in terms of how to slice them thin, whatever. So it's a substitute for for people who want to eat healthier. They don't want to eat the potato chip; they want to eat the vegetable. And they explain the whole process of how these things
How
are
you make
made.
it.
But I would still say I'm eating a piece of zucchini. If I
Yeah,
make a
if you know
zucchini
it.
chip, so.
Yeah. Bobby asked you about liquids from coconut, and since the time has ended, so B'ezrat Hashem, next week
time.
we'll answer it. Okay, so and